Thank you, Mariana. Thank you so much. Thank you. So this is an expected panel. Usually it's a reverse. We have the media interviewing, and thank you, the program team, for accepting that we give the floor to the media. You are always behind the scene. I'm very, very happy to be with you. I think it's probably, not to be too pretentious, the only conference in the world where we are, in fact, having media being totally transparent. And this is a session where we'll have no censorship, totally transparency. And I'm pleased to be joined from my left to my right by my friend Manus, Cranny, Geoeconomics editor at The National, please. Fatma Fahad, a great friend, journalist anchor at Al-Arabiya. Thank you, Fatma. Caroline Faraj, the CNN Vice President and CNN Arabic Editor-in-Chief. Thank you. Tom Giles, the Executive Editor Technology of Bloomberg. Thank you, Tom. And Matthew, who doesn't need any introduction, Matthew Martin, who is a transfer from Bloomberg, now Chief Saudi Arabia, Semafor. So guys, I have one question to start with. If you have to describe the mood of FII9 in one word, what it will be? Ladies first.
I can say charged.
Charged.
Charged, full of energy, lots of energy. I can see investors, decision makers, leaders, young people are all talking full of energy. They're not really missing any minute in order to make use of every opportunity happening.
Your colleague Richard Quest was very kind yesterday to say at his midnight show, it is the most refreshing conference. So he made my day. Fatma.
I will echo him as well.
It's hard to describe in one word, but I'll try. Perhaps unlocking, because it's unlocking opportunities, innovation, investment. It's unlocking the future. It's unlocking conversations. So yes, I think the word would be unlocking.
Manus?
I would say 3 days of 3 different fields. Frenetic, day 1.
Frenetic.
Frenetic. Day 2, I'd say, is interactive. I did much more bilateral meetings yesterday. You weren't working me as hard yesterday, Richard. And today is, I would say, much more considered. So I think we've got 3 very distinct phases in terms of how the flow and how I find it. And I got to say, Riyadh differs greatly from Miami to Rio, where I've had the pleasure. So 3 days, 3 words.
Tom?
Build. I had the privilege of visiting Jeddah before coming here to Riyadh, and everywhere you look, there's cranes. All of you who've been in Riyadh, you see the building that's happening here. So there's that physical building. There's also a very ambitious plan to build a tech hub, to create jobs, to lure capital, to generate innovation. I look at things through a tech lens. And so I've spoken to a lot of tech leaders on stage here and on the sidelines of this conference. And there's a great willingness on the part of the technology industry to bring capital and bring jobs and bring innovation here and use Riyadh and this whole region as a launching point for a whole lot of technology and a lot of AI change making.
My dear Matthew, one word.
Well, we've had such great answers already. I think I would just personally describe it as personally exhausting. It's been 3 days that's just been absolutely packed back to back with private meetings on the sidelines. You've obviously had the sort of the who's who of global finance and tech and heads of state on stage. So trying to cram everything into these 3 days, and then a succession of dinners and receptions and things in the evenings. So at the end of today, I am completely exhausted, but it's been worth it.
Oh my God, it's not often that you get so much compliment from media. Thank you, guys, thank you. So, usually, as chief editors, as great professionals, you always have convictions. You are supposed to know a lot of things on many topics. Is there any moment during FI9 or a statement on stage which, or that shift your perspective or challenge your assumptions or conviction? Fatma.
Yes, I think so. Honestly, there's been so many great talks, so many great speakers that were here talking to us, and great discussions too. But I mean, I think the one that really clicked for me is when His Excellency Yasser Al-Rumayyan was saying that AI being in the hands of a few, it's going to be not a good idea. And that, I think, shifted AI from being an opportunity to being a responsibility, in my head at least.
I think there are many, but I'll mention two of them. One of them that AI investments is heading to Global South, 60 billion plus people living there, and the young people are also the majority. So that's, for me, it was like music to my ears. But the other thing was a quote from the CEO of Humane.
Tariq Amin.
Tariq Amin, when he said that he feels so happy and excited when he comes to the office and see his staff passionate and ready and excited to do the work, and he's working with such young people who are passionate. For me, was really important to hear that from somebody who is working with numbers, working with technology all the time, to notice such an important element in his growth.
AI, tech, Tom, as technology boss, what do you, is what also something related to technology or something totally different?
Well, I think it is somewhat, everything relates to technology in my view, so please forgive me, but I think that there's a realism and a self-awareness about ambitions, right? There's spending ambitions, there's investment ambitions, there's Vision 2030, and there's also reality. Things like budget deficits, things like oil prices that get in the way. Now, 2030 is still a few years away, and we don't know exactly how far this country is going to get to those goals, but I think a willingness to face that head on and be realistic about what is possible and where do we have to pare back ambitions, and frankly, where are we going to go deeper and go even more ambitious than we might have in one area. And I think data centers is an area where there is tremendous willingness to invest, and I'm sure we'll come back to that.
Matthew?
Yeah, look, I think for me, I think some of the really interesting conversations at the beginning of day one on your board of change makers, when you've had all of these top Wall Street CEOs, and they're all here, and we had a few days ago JP Morgan celebrating their 90th anniversary in the kingdom. Goldman Sachs is doubling down on investing into the country. BlackRock have just signed this ginormous deal to invest in the Aramco gas project. So, I think it sort of comes to this sentiment, which I think sort of follows on from what Tom was saying, that, there has been this sort of recognition of some of the limits of the government's ability to fund everything. And so there is a requirement to go out and encourage more foreign capital to come in. And there are these green shoots of that starting to occur now in a way that, having the privilege of having been to every one of the 9 FIIs here.
Thank you for that, for your loyalty.
That, I don't think what was as prevalent in the first few editions. And so, we have seen more now of these the foreign investors, looking at starting to, follow up their commitments of opening offices and having a presence here, with also starting to put some of their own capital at work here.
Manus?
I think there's two, and I'll do them in reverse order. I think yesterday evening, Richard, I began my new job back in the region on May the 12th, and I was standing outside your conference here when Trump arrived. I didn't have a pass, but I got in. Thank you. I think if we talk about the evolution of when Al-Shara sat on that stage yesterday evening, from May the 12th to where we are now, that relationship, I think, between Saudi Arabia and Syria, there's only one conversation really in the Gulf in terms of a destination of capital, whereas the additional opportunity, and that additional opportunity is in Syria. And the kind of relationship the messaging from that interaction to the world for us was very significant. The second one was on the Changemakers board with Wall Street, but I'll go for not the Americans, but for Georges El-Hedri of HSBC, who made it very clear about what sovereignty is. Sovereignty is the ability to thread the needle in China, to understand what the priority of China is, will help you navigate what it is to do business at a sovereign level. And sovereignty is changing. Sovereignty is about foreign policy, not just in diplomatic foreign policy, but in chips, technology and defense. So those were the two for me.
We had the pleasure this year to host almost 20 head of states, 45 plus ministers representing almost 60, 70 nations. And we saw many entrepreneurs, we saw world leaders, scientists. Who do you think has changed the conversation this week?
That is a very tough one to call.
So you can think for 1 minute before Fatma answer first. I think
I want to say
she has an answer.
She has an answer.
I hope I have an answer, but it's not maybe specifically to that question, because I want to say who created this conversation, who made this conversation happen. And that's definitely Saudi leaders. That's definitely Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He had the vision for this conference. He had the vision to bring all the leaders from around the world in one place, having the conversation, discussing the future, all in the sake of humanity and making it better for all of us and each and every one of us here today. So I think those, yeah.
You have a very valid point. Time is flying. 2016, His Royal Highness, who was a deputy crown prince at that time, has challenged His Excellency Yasser Omar and myself to say, let's create something, to quote him, where investors from all over the world will come to understand where to put their money in terms of geographies and in terms of sectors. This is the DNA of FII. Thank you, Fatma, for reminding us that.
Absolutely.
I think I'll go back to the AI. AI, I think, dominated all the discussion. And I doubt that anybody started any session without talking about the AI, be it investment or developments, health and tourism. And we heard also my friend and my colleague Richard Quest, when he was moderating the sessions with the tourism, that they all said that they're using it, it's shortcut. But at the same time, they all agreed that the human element is still important, because whatever progress you're doing, you still need, the client needs to see a human being dealing with them and treating them differently. So that takes us to the main point, which is there's a change in the way that the countries and the speakers are changing. And I attended a couple of FII, and also I was listening to it previously. The discussion was, the AI was a buzzword. The discussion was about, we'd like to have it. We're joining strategically. But now the discussion is, what is it for me? How can I do it? What am I benefiting? And also the role of upskilling the talents in my country. So it has to be nationalized in order to feel that it is done for me. It's not only I am taking it from the source and keeping my people to run it. So that was so clear, and I think that it was for me, it was also another headline that we used.
Manus, did you find the who?
I searched deep in my soul, Richard. There's one conversation that I had, one in public and 3 in private. The one in public, I think, personifies the very essence of Saudi Arabia and the wider GCC. It's about the flow of capital. There's a huge amount of sovereign capital to be deployed. We know that. That's a given. It's about that moment of change between a capital. You come here to raise capital, but where we are now is people are ready to invest a lot more capital, which plays to this theme in terms of AI. If you look at what Humane are doing, if I look at what G42 are doing in the UAE, but here Humane in terms of what they're doing on the tech level, this is now a destination for real deployment of capital, which is a very, very key shift from where we were, maybe even, Richard, just 3 years ago. And that conversation continued on, like Matthew. I've had the privilege of having some bilateral conversations and breakfasts, and it was very, very clear that there's a shift by some of the biggest PE companies in the world in terms of the amount of allocation. This is an under-allocated area geographically, and that's going to change. That's my takeaway from the public and the private. It was Rishi Kapoor at InvestCorp, actually, by the way, if you want to put a pinpoint on it.
Matthew.
So, not a head of state, but as a self-interested Brit who's been living in the Gulf for nearly 15 years, it was nice to see Rachel Reeves come out and say that we're finally going to get this UK Gulf free trade agreement done, which has been sitting around for a long time, which is hopefully one of those things that will be good for trade between both countries and help with developments and investments across both. So, that was with my self-interested hat on, that was something that I was pleased to hear is finally going to see the light of day.
Did you find something during FI9 that you were not expecting at all, as an inspiring idea, inspiring leader, inspiring topic? I will tell you why I'm asking that question after, because personally, I find that I was surprised that some key topics that you are talking about all year long were not discussed during 3 days and 250 plus sessions. So did you discover something new or something which was unexpected?
I think the reference to the wealth disparity around the world and the risk that that can mean to stable, what we have now is the wealth disparity between the upper and the lower incomes around the world in democracies is now perhaps the biggest instability. I don't know whether the right word is threat, the biggest instability factor going into 2026. You've already had significant change in the United States of America as a result of that in many ways. One can, at some level, attribute that to Donald Trump being re-elected in the way and the style in which he is and in which his policies are taking shape. But I think that's something which did come through, more so in private conversations than anything else, not so much in the public conversations, Richard.
Fatma?
For me, I think what was unexpected, really, seeing leaders from around the world and innovators and investors and just participants. I mean, we've seen leaders and participants from Russia, from Ukraine, from China, from the US, from all over the world.
And Syria.
And Syria too, exactly. And that tells me that the compass today is pointing towards Riyadh. And FII being global is not just a global summit, it's way beyond capital, it's way beyond its purpose now. I think it's reached the stars.
Tom?
The urgency of sovereign AI and sovereign technology more generally, and there does seem to be a genuine belief that this is possible in some way. I don't think you can achieve true sovereignty across the entire piece, particularly given some concentration we see, say, in terms of, who's making the most advanced chips, who's deriving benefit from that, where they're manufactured geographically. However, there does seem to be a great deal of will behind it, and again, an urgency to extricate, and you made reference to this earlier, but extricate individual regions, whether it's Europe, whether it's the Middle East, North Africa, from this big fight between the US and China. And, we're starting to see at least a few signs, thankfully, from East Asia right now that maybe there's going to be a little bit of a truce.
Caroline?
I think the outcome of the study or the research that the FII Institute, together with EPSIS, had conducted, for me, the numbers were shocking, especially that the cost of living is the #1 concern to the people.
4 consecutive years.
Exactly.
How do you explain that leaders are not able or are not fixing that issue?
In some countries, maybe they're not able, but also maybe sometimes they need a wake-up call to have such research to be like a wake-up call to put it on the top of their agenda. But sometimes the decision, whether you're towards politics or towards economy or towards education, whatever, sometimes the priorities are misleading. But I think such numbers from a study like this should be an eye-opener to a lot of decision makers, because when I was really digging deep and seeing the health issue, the retirement issue, the lack of jobs, the numbers are really shocking, and it needs to be really an eye-opener and reminder to all decision makers, no matter whether they're young or old, or in private sector or government sector. I think they have to read this research.
Matthew, do you think there is a disconnection between leaders and private sector or the citizen?
Clearly.
Because the data are alarming, and it's not the first year, as Caroline is saying. And we don't see things moving in the right direction, as all citizens are saying.
Yeah, clearly. Look, I think there's, this huge government debt problem that is hanging over a lot of countries. It just really impacts the ability to try and plan long term and try and think about where you want your countries to be in a decade's time. And I think that that creates a lot of perverse incentives in the way that governments relate to their people and communicate and try and set policy around some of these ideas. And your ability to invest in healthcare, your ability to invest in sort of modernizing your government through the use of AI, and and I think that one of the really interesting things that I think you see here is that there's a 2030 plan, there's going to be a 2040 plan, there's probably a 2050 plan as well, and so that. That sense of sort of thinking long term is something that's often lacking in a lot of other places, and I think that for us as the media in sort of covering that, it creates some challenges, because we've talked about Saudi Arabia and this sort of economic reset, and the government's been fairly frank at talking about reprioritizations of projects and trying to refocus budgets on certain areas. And for us in the media, it's our job to sort of try and digest exactly what that means and who's going to be affected. But I think coming into this week, I think it's fair to say that over the course of these events over the past 9 years, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. And there's often been, going into it, a sort of a fairly clear narrative around what the story, the broad theme around it is going to be. And to me, it wasn't really clear this year going into it what that was. So it's been interesting, and I suppose sort of my sort of takeaway is trying to sort of work out what the pulse of the event has been. And look, I think that we see the kingdom is still going to be investing into these big areas and investing into these things for the future. And as much as I personally have contributed to a huge amount of noise and headlines around projects like NEOM and some of the other giga projects as well, but I think it was pretty clear from the various things that we heard that they are still going.
At many sessions, former head of state, former leaders, CEOs have mentioned the disconnection of Europe. Do you agree or disagree? Who wants to react first?
Even the poll actually was disappointing when it was zero chance for EU to join the race. That was a shocking thing. So it's not only from outside. And
do you agree as a journalist? This is something that you were noticing, or it was new for you?
I am noticing, but maybe I'm not noticing the zero element, but I'm noticing that there's lots of interest. Look at here. Look at the investment that's being done here. And also even the research and the survey that you've done, it was a positive sign to see that there are signs that the AI investment is also heading to Global South. That is also a good sign to see that, finally this 6 billion plus population is going to have a taster of what investment in AI is for their own benefit. But I can tell you that, looking here and listening to all the agreements and the deals being done on the ground only in FII, it's amazing.
Yes,
how often do you go to Europe?
I go often.
I knew it. This is why I'm asking you. Do you agree or disagree?
I think I agree. But I also agree with you that recognizing the responsibility of AI, ethical AI, as we'd like to say, I think is important, and it'll make it easier and clearer to have those investments into AI, into reducing the cost of living, into benefiting humanity in the way we want and hope.
I think it's important to reflect on what has happened in Europe in the past 3 years. Europe is trying to defend a war, Russia, Ukraine, the conflict. I think defense has sort of gone so far up the escalator in terms of the pressure from the Trump administration to spend 5% of your GDP on NATO and Europe, that ripple effect. I think defense has taken up so much political oxygen and political time in Europe, and rightly so, in terms of where we are, that maybe the ability of nations like Saudi Arabia to really connect with the United States at a sovereign level for the technological advances. Europe is drowning in those kind of issues on a geopolitical front, a defense front, and a war front. We don't have the same kind of conflict issues to deal with here, and so therefore this nation with Humane in the United Arab Emirates, where I'm now based, with G42, etc., Richard, these sovereign nations can create the kind of relationship with this US administration which bears quicker fruit, bigger fruit, and with less, perhaps, political angst. They're very smart in Saudi Arabia on how they welcome the president and how they will visit the United States.
You are all very good on headlines. So
he's better than me.
No, but Tom is good also. So, Tom, and each of you, please. After FII9, what is the headline that you will take to the world?
That I need a reporter to cover tech in this region. So that's a message that I'm going to take back. I mean, we have a lot of reporters here covering everything government, the economy, real estate, finance. The list goes on and on and on. And everyone covers a little piece of tech, but we need to spend more resources devoted to telling the tech story because I think it's big and it's going to get a lot bigger.
So we'll deliver the message to Mike. Caroline.
Please.
Probably I'll take with me, AI is dominating, but humanity comes first.
Can you repeat the headline? Caroline, can you repeat?
Yes, AI is dominating, but humanity comes first.
Great. Fatma?
I would say look to the future optimistically, but be cautious.
Champions of headlines. Matthew. It's
Well,
Manus, giving you a compliment. Come on.
Yeah, the problem is it normally takes me about 5 hours to get there in the end of hammering away at various things and rewriting things several times. But you know, I think I think the sense and the mood and the direction is that you know there's a lot of behind the scenes planning for the future that is going on here in particular, and that you know I think besides a lot of this a lot of what we talked about around these issues of reprioritization and budget sustainability, I think that you know we will continue to see the ability of the country to deploy vast sums into the areas that it wants to, and whether that is going to be AI or sports investments, you know, this is going to continue to be a super hot news story going forwards.
I have a question to the audience. My last question is to the audience and then to you.
Okay.
Let's start with the audience. Are you leaving FII9 tonight more optimistic or more pessimistic? So please raise your hand if you are more optimistic when you arrived.
That's
More
a good
pessimistic?
Number.
Oh my God.
There's one at the back.
Only one, because you need always to have one. But let's be you. More optimistic or more pessimistic?
I would say more realistic optimism. I did a piece when I arrived that said, oh, there's a pivot, a huge pivot from mega, giga to AI. It's a much more nuanced shift. So I've shifted my view from day one to day 3. Do not underestimate the capex in this pivot from giga to AI. There you go.
Fatma, more optimistic,
just like
more
the
pessimistic?
Headline, I would say cautiously optimistic, because, I mean, caution comes from the unknown. We don't know AI, what will provide with us, but optimistic because these conversations are happening, these discussions are happening, and I think it should continue to create that future we are looking forward to.
Caroline?
I am also cautiously optimistic, but I will also keep an eye on all the promises if it is going to be implemented. But I was so happy to see that the Red Sea projects that we heard from the CEO that they've done all their plans and now they're going out. So we'll keep an eye.
Tom?
I hate to say this, but more optimistic. And that's
Why you hate it? Why? Are you paranoid, or the journalists we always talk about the half-empty glass?
Pessimistic, but seriously, I mean, look, there's a lot of concerns, right? You mentioned war. There's concerns about valuations getting ahead. There's concentration of wealth and resources, but at the same time, I also see the opportunity that AI and other advances, development of capital markets here, can create, the possibility of creating jobs, and the possibility of creating mechanisms that will enable the global south and people who are less privileged to at least have a fighting chance. And just one example, if you'll indulge me, I just had on a panel this morning the Replit CEO who is creating tools that he wants to enable 1 billion people to get online and coding. That number may be a bit optimistic, but the more people who are coding and building things, the more opportunity I think we have to see a bit of that wealth and a little bit of that concentration spread to different parts of the world and different people.
Well, look, I'm a natural cynic, but I must say that some of the optimism does become a little infectious. And, as much as, I think it's very easy to paint quite a sort of utopian world that can come about through AI and through a lot of the investments and a lot of the sort of cooperation that we've seen happening and the sort of investments going into areas like the Global South. So, that all gives me a lot of reasons to feel optimistic. There's always something niggling in my soul, though. That just makes me worry because, this is our job to question and to worry about these things. But I suppose if you were to ask me, really, personally, I'm in the market and I'm invested, so I guess that makes me an optimist.
So I would like to suggest to you a headline, because you made my day. So FII9, a lesson of optimism. Having said that, because we have to hear to our audience. Having said that, thank you so much for being with us. And you're making an amazing transition for the next closing moment, which we will talk about peace with the 2025 Peace Nobel laureates. A round of applause for our friends. Thank you.